I'm your poetry professor. Have a seat. Sit down. Hi, class. My name is Wahoo, and today we're gonna be reading a poem from John Keats. He was a lovely little poet who died. We're gonna be reading Ode to a Nightingale, but today I wanted to try something a little bit different. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background on Sir Keats. I want you to know a little bit about the mister, okay? So this video is gonna be a little bit longer. You can probably already tell. Stop, get comfortable. Taught myself, let me get a glass of wine. I'm nervous. It's been a while since I've taught a class. I had to get out my blazer for this one. Okay, so let's get started. Who is Mr. Keats? Okay, Mr. Keats, John Keats, was born in 1795 and he died in 1821. Now he was a Brit, okay? He was one of those crumpet eaters, tea drinkers, you know. He said probably used the word telly a lot, you know. Said the C word a lot. A cultural difference. I don't know if you guys knew this, but the C word over there is not that bad. So if a Brit ever calls you a cheeky little, don't take offense. For those of you who are bad at math, he was 25 years old when he died. Now, I'm 20, so the idea of dying in 5 years, well, but he died of tuberculosis, consumption as he would have known it. Yeah. So the movement that he was a part of as a writer was the Romanticism movement, where people talked a lot about love and romance and sex, all that good jazz. He published his first volume, Poems by John Keats, in 1817, and his second published work was Endymion, and it was poorly received. And his enemy, this guy who he didn't really like, was like, yeah, he probably died of tuberculosis because nobody liked his book, which is like kind of shady. And in 1820, a year before his death, this is after he fell in love with this beautiful lady who he couldn't marry because, you know, he was a poet, so he's like poor, and he's dying. So, yeah, kind of heartbroken about that. So he published his third volume of poetry, which includes the poem we're going to be reading today, Ode to a Nightingale. Ain't that pretty? Now, Ode to a Nightingale was written under a plum tree in his garden. Yeah, in the garden of Keats's house at Wentworth Place, according to his friend Charles Brown. Charles Brown, that's like the most regular name I ever heard. Now let's get into more about the themes of the poem and like what's the poem is about and what I want you to keep in mind while I'm reading this poem for you. Now the poem focuses on a speaker standing in a dark forest, listening to a beguiling and beautiful song of the nightingale bird. Okay. Now the word nightingale symbolizes love and or loss. Okay. So I want you to keep that in mind as I read through this. Okay. So we're done on the notes part, and we're gonna start reciting. Okay. So this portion you don't really, you just sit there and like just be. Okay. Okay. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, and Lethe-wards had sunk. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou light-winged Dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green, and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. Oh, for a draught of vintage, that hath been cooled a long age in the deep-delved earth, tasting of Flora and the country green, dance and provincial song and sunburnt mirth, Oh, for a beaker full of the warm of the south, full of the true, the blushful hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim, and purple-stained mouth, that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. Fade far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known, the weariness, the fever, and the fret, here, where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few sad last gray hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow, and let an eye despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his pards, but on the viewless wings of poesy, though the dull brain perplexes and retards, already with thee tender is the night, and haply the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry face, but here there is no light. Say what from heaven is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs, but in embalmed darkness guess each sweet wherewith the seasonable month endows the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild. White hawthorn and the pastoral eglantine, fast fading violets covered up in leaves, and mid-May's eldest child, the coming musk rose full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. Darkling, I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. Now more than ever seems it rich to die, to cease upon the midnight with no pain, while thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. Still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, to thy high requiem became a sod. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self-image, the self-same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth when sick for home she stood in tears amid the alien corn. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu, thy plaintive anthem fades, past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now 'tis buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? Wow. Damn. Yeah. This really makes me sad for John Keats. Because I know he saw his end coming. And this was his way of making art out of something terrifying. Good for him. Thank you so much. That is all for for this week's Poetry Saturday readings. Let me know if you like the research portion a bit. If you like having the little bit of background before you hear the poem. And if you like hearing my thoughts on it after, too. But yes, thank you so much. I'll see you here next Saturday. And I think I'll be teaching poetry from now on. Thank you so much. Mwah.